Fremantle are brought back to reality after a loss to the Cats.
Richmond have to do it without Dusty Martin in 2021.
And Collingwood poo their jocks against the Blues. This is the DrewFooty Show.
Long road, took a tumble down this black hole. Stuck in Sunday league, but I'm on levels.
Hello, you folks, and welcome back to another episode of the DrewFooty Show. We're back again in person today. I miss you, buddy.
I miss you too, my queen. Gay.
Make sure you're following DrewFooty_ on Instagram to be involved in the show next week. Go on the stories, tap the sticker, write in a question. Some people find it difficult, and it baffles me. But make sure you go on the story, tap the sticker, write it in, and then you'll be involved in the show.
It's not hard. Make our content for us.
I'm going to start the show this week, Jesse, a bit differently. We're going to talk about COVID, everyone's distant, hated cousin. Yeah, so I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but it is a factor that is immensely affecting the league at the moment. Last year, the team's isolated and there wasn't really any close contacts or anything like that, except for Connor McKenna and a couple Essendon players off the top of my head. But this year, like, the venues are changing each week. The game times aren't even like finalised until 24 hours before they take place. It's all mumbo jumbo, a bit like that sentence at the moment, Jesse. I'm after a stinker. Take over.
I read an article this morning that Josh Dunkley has to isolate and therefore will miss this week's clash with what is fixtures Adelaide in Ballarat. The article then goes on to explain that the Dogs D's game from the following week will likely be brought forward so that teams don't have to cross borders. And that means Adelaide and Gold Coast are left out, but Adelaide and Gold Coast have already played this year, so they have to then change their games. So it's a bit of a stinky mess.
The first time since like World War II that games have been delayed and whatnot. So it's a hectic time in history, and it's going to be a time that we're going to look back on and be like, hey, remember that?
Yeah, it's an iffy one. I think the AFL's done a great job of navigating us through this pandemic, but like last year it felt more like most teams to some extent were suffering at the same level, whereas this year, not that I'm criticising anyone, but it's like you're sort of getting games here and there where teams will lose a home game and then won't necessarily get it back, and then it's like, okay, now you lose a home game. Just the integrity at such a crucial part of the season, it's a little bit iffy.
Bloke of the Week is back, baby, and Jesse's brought forward a nomination.
I'm the Bloke of the Week after I missed last week, and you fucking stitched me up last week saying that I didn't want to show up because the Eagles lost, but anyway.
Those are rumours.
So this week's nomination of Bloke of the Week is a guy who won the game for his amateur side in South Australia, I believe, with his nose. Let's take a look. So this is in the dying minutes. He's taking a grab.
Those are some gross jerseys, eh?
Yeah.
Those blue and red ones with like the button up.
Yeah, watch this. This is pretty much after the siren, I think. Yeah, after the siren. Boom! He saved it like bloody Donnarumma with his face.
Oh, get out of it! That just got him in the nose.
Yeah,
then.
he did. After the siren, he kicked it into his face, and the player, the man on the mark, copped a broken nose.
What an unfortunate series of events, buddy.
Yeah, would you be happy if you won the game with your nose and broke it?
Yeah, probably.
Possible concussion.
Your nose is a very weak part of the body. It's mainly cartilage, it's actually not bone, so yeah, easily broken. Easy fix. He'll be back next week. He's the local hero this week. He's the Bloke of the Week. Congratulations. Let's get on with the games. First game, primetime footy, was the Dockers versus Geelong, our first primetime game since 2015. Everyone's so hyped to see what Dockers can do on the national stage.
Everyone was so hyped.
But yeah, didn't show up. Geelong,
it was wet, to be fair.
It was wet, yes. There was lots of precipitation. You boys said they're a good wet weather side, and I was like, alright, you're probably right, but let's see what that actually means. And it's literally like, it doesn't even affect them. Our skill execution was woeful, just dropping the ball, like slipping over. Oh, just absolutely terrible. And Geelong, it just didn't even affect them. This game looked like an under-9s Auskick side up against like the state under-18s. There was so much, just the age gap and the maturity of the two lists was really on show, I thought. A 69-point loss. I was going into the game thinking Freo could give Geelong some issues, but we didn't. But I didn't think our intensity was too bad. The skill execution was off, but the intensity wasn't too bad all game. It's just a write-off for me. I don't think it's one to read into too much, like, oh, Freo are doomed. They were getting so much crap all over social media, the Dockers, and yeah, I don't think it's too warranted. Geelong are looking like a very, very good side, potentially going to win a flag this year. They were impenetrable, Jesse. We'd try to switch, they'd stop the switch. We'd go inboard, we'd turn the ball over so we couldn't go down there. We'd go along down the line and Tui and Stewart would eat it for breakfast all day long.
By contrast, you guys were very penetrable. You guys actually had your ankles behind your head at one point.
Pretty much, eh? I'm not going to read into this game too much. I said last week on the DrewFooty Show, because there was so much like optimism and hype from the Freo fans going into this game that we could challenge Geelong. I said last week on the DrewFooty Show, sounded like a pessimistic plonker, but I said I wasn't impressed by Freo's performance last week against Hawthorn, and if we come up against a top 8 side and played like that, we'd lose, and I called it.
Exactly. I think part of the reason, and I agree with you that Freo didn't play so bad in isolation. I actually remember that game we went to last year that we referenced where it was wet. Didn't think Fremantle played horribly, but you could see the difference. It was like Geelong was playing in dry weather and Fremantle was playing in wet weather. But I think the reason for the social media backlash is because, most likely, because the Eagles got absolutely reamed on social media for the last 3 weeks in a row. Fremantle go ahead of us on the ladder. And for the first time in a while, I found myself barracking for every Geelong goal against Fremantle. I was so stoked with that battering, so I can understand why.
We should have put the balls in the sink at training, eh? Just run the tap, get the footies under.
Be a bit cold. Oh, footballs.
But if we put the balls in the sink, they would have been wet, and then when the game started, we would have been able to like adjust to it easier.
Apparently, the Eagles prepare for wet weather by getting a jar of Vaseline and just lathering their balls with it.
Sean Darcy, I don't know if he's going to be out this week. Hopefully not. He hurt his knee. Rory Lobb, tall, pretty average player, but important because just of his height. Fife just looked like he was playing with one arm for most of that game. So, yeah, disappointing. After a good win against Hawthorn the week before. We got Sydney this week. They are looking red hot. I am not pulling my pants for that game. I'm very confident that we can beat them 3 times in a row.
The pulling pants is unrelated.
Richmond vs Brisbane was the Friday night game, a game that I streamed, and I was very happy to see the best Richmond side show up, because there's nothing worse than when you're doing a live stream and the game just stinks. Because I like to be entertained by the football that I watch, and it makes for a better stream. Anyway, you could see from the first quarter that the best Richmond side had shown up, looking clean again. They were looking disjointed in the last few weeks, and this week they were looking jointed. Analysis. Brisbane won this game earlier in the season. Brisbane won it quite comfortably, so to see Richmond, who have been in bad form, win this game and Brisbane drop it after the form that Richmond have been in as well. I'm going to have to give the losers of the week to the Lions this week, just because they've dropped out of the 4 now. Port Adelaide have hopped up. The Pretenders have hopped the Lions. What have you made of the Lions in recent weeks?
I agree. I think the one team that we kind of talked about is not really dropping too many games they should win. I think they've been really consistent over the last 3 years, to be honest. The St Kilda game, and obviously Sydney earlier in the year doesn't look as bad now, but the St Kilda game was one where they really will rue that. Losing to Richmond in isolation, not terrible, but because, obviously Richmond can play well. They had Nankervis and Lambert back in, and Chol played really well. But the Lions just faltering almost at the last hurdle here, and it could cost them top 4 because Port Adelaide don't have a hard run home, and if they're not in the top 4, I don't think the Lions can win the flag.
We've got a comment here from Mason Knight 6, and he says, I think Richmond may have just locked in a grand final spot.
It doesn't take much for Richmond to look at a grand final spot, does it?
I know, but after so many weeks of slating Richmond, like, it's the dynasty over, blah, 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 they have one win, look sick against a good side. It's like, alright, yeah, Richmond can still play. They're going to have to win a flag if they do so without Dusty, as we mentioned in the intro, now with a kidney injury. He's only missed 9 games in his whole career, I think, so he's going to be out for the rest of the season. Yeah,
he's such a durable player.
Yeah, very durable, but not anymore. Yeah, no. Kidney, I don't know if it's ruptured or just damaged or bruised or whatever, but yeah, that's a massive out, as big an out as you can get. And yeah, you mentioned Chol. He had a great game. That 4th goal that he kicked, breaking a tackle, left peg from 50, scrumptious.
It's funny to think that it takes an actual trauma to the organ for Dustin Martin to actually miss a football game. That's really unfortunate, though. It means we're going to not see a champ play in finals when he's been fantastic in finals for 4 years now. If Dusty doesn't play in the grand final last year, they probably lose. So he's such a key player. Yeah,
that's true. I thought Jack Graham really stood up in this game. I think he only had like 19 disposals. He had 2 goals, but he was really damaging with the ball. A player that I haven't really taken much notice of, but he was all over it against the Lions. And how could I forget to mention, it was Jack Riewold's 300th game. Absolute champion of the competition, and he kicked 6. A good 6 as well. He's an elite set shot. There's players that sort of come in and out of form with their set shots, spray heaves, but Jack Riewold's always been so consistent with his set shot kicking, and was on display against the Lions. Do you reckon they'll make the 8 now?
I do think they'll make the 8, yeah.
Isn't it mental to think that St Kilda beat both these sides? If you were told, like 2 months ago, St Kilda will beat the Lions and Richmond, you'd be bloody mind blown, mate.
Yeah, we'll get into this as well, but then they miss a big opportunity to beat Port, and they're still in the hunt for the finals, and it's going to be a big clash this week against.
Are we talking about St Kilda?
Yeah.
That's the next game.
Nice.
On the
segue.
Running list, yes.
The running list.
This is the first time in AFL history that a game has been played in a COVID hotspot.
Huh.
Port Adelaide were flown into Melbourne. despite like everyone being in lockdown and that. So going into this game, if the Saints won, they would have gone into the 8. If Port won, they could have gone into the 4. So it was a massive contest here at Marvel. And I just wanted to say some of the key outs that Port had this week. Rosie, Butters, Motlop, Hartlett, Gray, Rockcliffe, Lockie Jones, Fantasia and Dersma.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Lots of key outs. So to come up against the St Kilda side that have been in good form in the last few weeks, get the job done away, that could almost be the winners of the week, but I'm not going to give it to them because St Kilda are trash. But
they're not that bad. They just beat Brisbane.
Yeah, they didn't get. Georgiades kicked 4, and from the highlights, he looked very damaging. He looks like he's getting better every single week. And Jack Steele with another mammoth game, 38 disposals or something like that, and a goal. We take players like this for granted. Just another day at the office for Jack Steele, but absolute gun performance. Couldn't get him across the line against Port Adelaide, despite a late surge. The power surged to the... Oh, no, get it.
No, that's good.
Power into the top 4. Could make...
Nice.
Yeah. Could stay there. And after the season that they've had, it's been pretty up and down. So if they could sneak into the 4, that'll keep them in good stead for finals. Because we know that Port's best can almost beat every side in the competition. This season, maybe not, but definitely last season. So if they can recapture that, get some key players back, who I just mentioned, could be in premiership contention somehow.
I agree.
Gold Coast versus the Bulldogs. Expected result, but good on the Suns, competing with one of the best sides in the competition. Jack McRae, fastest player to ever rack up 5,000 disposals. Absolute gun. Toby McLean, ACL. Breaks my heart seeing that sort of stuff, Jesse.
That's the second one of his career too, which is pretty heartbreaking. Pretty decent player as well. Such a young guy.
For Gold Coast, Jeremy Sharp, East Freo boy, had his best game at AFL levels with... AFL levels. Best game at AFL level with 30 touches as well. Clean ball user, so another sun rising on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, he was a fairly high draft pick. I think peak 27. I want to say he was involved in a deal where they got Flanders as well. But it's good to see a young player sort of get his opportunity in that side, and they're playing well, and he's a part of that, so it bodes well.
Going from one young player to another, Jamara Ugle-Hagan shows up. He showed up, 3 goals, a couple of big marks, and lots of hype about young Jamara. So it's good to see him get on the score sheet and get into this Bulldogs side finally. They didn't go top this week, but they did close the gap on the Ds. Obviously, they drew. That's the next game we're going to talk about. But yeah, 2 points to the top now. The Ds versus Hawthorn at the MCG, a game where I thought the Hawks were going to get absolutely clapped after last week, getting clapped by Freo. They go to Melbourne, a much more superior side to the Dockers, and they take it up to them. The D's still having trouble against sides outside of the top 8, weirdly enough. They showed up against Port Adelaide last week, no issues, but the old Hawthorn Hawks come along and give them hurts. What do you make of Melbourne dropping these games? Because, they're the top side in the comp apparently. They look pretty vulnerable if they're dropping games against like GWS, the Hawks,
Crows earlier this year.
Pies.
Yeah, the Pies is the other one. Yeah.
So what do you make of that?
I'm going to maintain my opinion that it's still better than losing to the other contenders. It is not ideal having lapses, but then again, no team's gone through a whole season and been dominant. I still think Melbourne's best is the best. I think that the Demon side that rolled Port in that Thursday night game, that was really impressive, and that's, to me, they look like a premiership side. They obviously just have lapses. They probably should have killed this game with a few minutes to go. I think they were at least like 7 points up or something like that. They should have done better to restrict the Hawks' scoring, but they couldn't, which is disappointing, but hopefully it doesn't really cost them.
Do you reckon it's like a motivation thing? Like they just can't get up for these games against sides that are just stinky, and they're just like, alright, we'll write these guys off. We're at the top of the ladder. Who cares about these little plebs? And then they just get taken off guard. Because for the big games, they always show up. It's weird.
I agree. I think, at least in case of Adelaide and Hawthorn, I thought there were 2 very good games where both Adelaide and Hawthorn played well, to their credit. Didn't catch the Collingwood one much. That one sounds like it was a bit more of a stinker comparatively. But either way, like obviously we know Melbourne can batter these sides. So I would say it's probably just mental lapses, yeah.
So I've got lots of messages this week about Hawthorn's youngsters after this result, Jesse. So we got a question here from Riley Burke, and he says, does this show how much hope the Hawks have with their youngsters? Who do you like?
Well, I'm just looking at the stats here, and I think it's fair to say that Hawthorns...
Sean Burgoyne.
Yeah, he's worth 2 teenagers. I think... Hawthorn owe that performance a lot to their senior players. Tom Mitchell was brilliant. I thought he was really, really good. Warper was there. O'Meara... I thought Phillips played really well as well. I watched him closely because he's my fantasy team, but I thought he had a real good impact. And then you go down to like James Cousins, and Lockie Bramble's one that I think they've kind of unearthed. I think that was his second game. I've got him in my fantasy team too.
Nice.
I think they're going okay, but I still think Denver Granger Barras is an elite talent as well. He went off with a shoulder, might have stayed on the field. Hopefully he gets a continued run at it because he's had an injury-riddled start to his career. Hawthorn still need to rebuild. Like, they still need to add to it. I think that particular performance was also due to their decent senior players playing well.
First Sunday game was North Melbourne and Essendon. North Melbourne, my new favourite team. They're competing every week, which is nice to see. It's good for North Melbourne fans who at the start of the season would have thought, oh God, can this season just end already? But each week they're showing up. They played pretty much 3 quarters against the Bombers, then the Bombers steamed home in that last quarter. Jake String, I think he kicked 3 in that last quarter. His good form continues.
Yeah, I was watching that game and I was a little relieved to see North playing well. I think if they'd gone back and got battered, it would have just made our loss look so much worse. But I think... I was definitely barracking for a North win, but even the fact that they got close to a side like Essendon, whose finals quality, you'd have to say, it puts the Eagles' loss in perspective a little bit. Everyone wants to say, Chicken Little, skies falling, blah, blah, blah. And it is a serious situation at West Coast, but, North are not a terrible side at all.
They're not that bad. The Eagles' loss isn't as bad, alright?
Yeah, that's not my point.
Parish and Merritt, we've talked about them every week just about, but 73 touches between them. We've got a question here from Basketball Aiden 273, and he wants to know if Essendon can win a final this year. They're in the 8 now.
So, the thing is, if they finish 7th or 8th, they'll play Sydney or Brisbane.
Yeah.
Mind you, they have a decent little rivalry with Sydney where the games are close.
Yeah,
so there's definitely a chance. But I think Brisbane and Sydney are comfortably better sides. But, of course, anything can happen in an elimination final.
Collingwood vs Carlton was played in front of an empty MCG, and I tipped Collingwood last week on Just the Tips. We were sort of tossing up who to tip.
Didn't you start with Carlton and switch to Collingwood?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you did. Right.
I did. So last week, Collingwood looked quite good against the Tigers, so I tipped them. And for 3 quarters of this game, I was happy with that tip. But they just ran out of gas, and the Blues jetted home and stole the victory. Harry Mackay with another 4 goals. His season keeps getting better. A player I've been impressed with is Jack Silvani. I think I said it a week or so ago on one of our shows, but I think his granddad died during the week and he was emotional at full time getting the result. But he plays a little bit of ruck as well, weirdly enough. Just got that athleticism, and he's just been executing the last few weeks, starting to develop as a player, which is nice to see.
Yeah, I think the ruck thing might have been more of a team needs thing, because they were going to have Cripps in the ruck at one point as well, so Silvani being kind of a tall player, he sort of stepped up. But yeah, he's not a bad little player.
We've got another player for winner of this week, and it was nominated by Will Thomas 14, so shout out to you, and he's nominated Sam Walsh. So Sam Walsh, winner of the week. Jesse, we look at Sam Walsh every week, and it's just like another 38 touches from Sam Walsh, another 39, another 36, and 2 goals. Can we start to talk about Sam Walsh as one of the best players in the competition? Because these performances that he's putting out are becoming a joke. He was best on ground against Freo, kicked the game-winning goal. Against Geelong, kicked 2 goals, had 30-something touches, and against Collingwood as well, best on ground. He's going to be a Brownlow medalist very soon, I think. He's so young. You talk about potential being reached. If his ceiling is meant to be hit when he's 27, 28 like most players, he's going to be an all-time great of the game. Patrick Dangerfield said he could be an all-time great, and just watching this kid play, he's unreal. Genuinely, I think he's a top 5 player in the comp at the moment. What do you reckon?
Big call. I think there's some very, very good midfielders out there. You got your Dusty, Bont, Fife, I still think are all better players.
Yeah,
Petrarca, Oliver.
This season though,
Even
he's been better than Fife this year.
Fair enough.
Been better than Wines.
I see. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right now,
All Australian midfield would be an interesting pick at the moment.
He's got to be in the All-Australian midfield.
I think he's on the edge.
It is tight.
You could conceivably pick Walsh over Parrish and Wines, but I think Wines and Parrish are also very good Brownlow chances. I don't know. I don't think Walsh is right in the Brownlow picture. He could get there with a good season.
He's probably got like 9 votes in the last month, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, we did just do a video on it on your channel. We didn't even mention him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a long season. He's playing really, really well. He's been very consistent, but it's competitive. To say someone's a top 5 midfielder, that's a very, very exclusive group. But he's very good. I'm not talking.
I think he probably will be one day.
I think he will win at least one Brownlow in his life. Yeah, definitely.
Probably got the most potential in the competition. Who has more potential than Sammy Walsh? Who do you think?
Oh, off the top of my head, it's
Oscar
really
Allen.
hard.
Adelaide versus West Coast. West Coast needing a response after an absolute putrid 3 weeks. Jesse, what'd you make of your boys against the Crows? Because the first quarter, I was like, yes, West Coast still suck. Jamie Cripps kicked 5, which is nice, popping up for goals, and Connor West.
Yeah, he debuted.
Had a decent Decent outing?
19 touches.
Nice. All right, now you take over.
I don't know how much is to read into this result. The Eagles kind of reverted back to their pre-Bulldogs form. And yeah, if you took out the last 3 weeks, you'd look at that result and go, yeah, it's about right.
Yeah.
One thing that really stuck out as probably the biggest takeaway is we just got a lot more attacking with our ball movement, moving it through the corridor, not stopping and turning and kicking back sideways and putting ourselves under pressure. That changed, and we did well without, Kennedy and Barras as well. A couple of young guys came in, did well. I'm quite buoyant, quite happy with that. One thing we did notice on the live stream was the Crows move the ball really well for a side that has a lot of young kids.
Yeah,
they actually are quite composed, and we found it hard to break them down at times. Normally, composure and moving the ball around the field, it's not easy for a young side. Yeah. But, he had a lot of guys like, Schoenberg had like 24 and a goal as well. Rebuild's going well, I reckon.
Them and the Kangas. Yeah. They both, moved the ball up the ground quite nicely for a young side. Developing nicely. The last game of the round was the Sydney Derby, played at Metricon. GWS were up by 6 goals in the second quarter, Jesse, and ended up losing by 4 goals. I reckon GWS are the best team in the comp every second week for a half. Seriously, don't get GWS, Jesse. We have a comment here from DeCourcy Jack Private, and he asks, why can't we hold a lead and play 4 quarters for once in our lives? I'm so sick of this. I think there's something seriously wrong with GWS, Jesse. They're mental. It's not there. They can't stay motivated for 4 quarters. You see glimpses of what they can achieve, and then it just goes to shite. Like losing to Gold Coast last week, beating the top of the ladder the week before, showing up against Sydney, the most informed comp for one half, being 6 goals up, then just pissing it down the drain, that lead. And I don't know what you think of GWS, but I'm pretty sick of them dropping these results because the talent's on the list. I say it every week. I'm a broken record, mate. Not happy with GWS.
I'm going to say, so we were live streaming, so I missed the entire part where GWS were going well, and then I turned it over after that, and then I was treated to Sydney just looking fucking hot.
Yeah.
Sydney looked hot.
Yeah.
Like, some of the ball movement was just electric, and obviously there's 2 sides to that. How much pressure is GWS putting on? It is an interesting question. Would you rather be consistently mediocre for 4 quarters, or would you rather be red hot for a half and then clearly have some maybe mental application or fitness issues? I think going forward, it's actually positive for the Giants that they know that we can play this well.
Yeah.
The year, I'm going to bring it back to West Coast, but the year before the Eagles won the flag, we spent more time in front than any other team in the comp. And we came 8th that year. We slid into the 8th. So what I'm getting at is fitness and application was the reason we didn't do better that year. And then the next year we saw it really come home strong. So that is not the worst sign for GWS. I'd be more nervous if I was watching them be shit or like at least average all the time.
So you reckon one more year with Leon, if they don't get into the 8, I think he's got to go after that, surely.
Yeah, maybe one more year's fair in terms of the coach. I think the playing list is talented.
Yeah,
they're going to get another high pick this year with Collingwood's pick as like pick 3 or something stupid like that. So they're not in a bad spot. Obviously retention's an issue for them, but this is an almost Giant side, and probably almost write them off for this year, but they're an outside chance to make the 8. But next year, be watching them closely.
They could still make the 8 because that 8 at the moment, the last 2 spots, they're just swinging around every week. Like it's like a roulette wheel. Buddy Franklin kicked 4, Papley kicked 4, just the stars of that side. No surprises there, but Papley's goals were so hot. Buddy just looking really good as well. I think he's only like 18 goals away from 1,000 now, so that's exciting. Could get that in the finals, which would be absolutely mega. Sydney, the most informed side in the comp at the moment. I put them down as a top 8 smoky at the start of the year. They're a premiership smoky now, Jesse.
I agree. Good call by you.
Yeah, one of the tales of the season though, because who saw it coming? Not many people, except for me. That's going to wrap up this scrappy show after the DrewFooty Show this week. Go check out Just the Tips for all of next round's analysis. Thanks for coming, buddy.
Thank you, my queen.
See you later, buddies. See ya.